A really good relational inventory to take is, am I getting enough in this relationship to grieve the loss of what I'm not getting? A relationship is going to give you everything. And there's going to be things that you have to let go of. But am I getting enough to grieve the loss of what I'm not getting?
That's
so
really
good. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Damn.
Welcome back to the Medicine Podcast. My name is Mimi, and this episode is brought to you by Immune Intel AHCC, the world's most clinically researched specialty immune supplement in the world. You can grab some at themedicine.com/products. And next to me here is this beautiful blue-eyed magician, lover, king, warrior that I get to do life with.
What is going on, everybody? We're back on the Medicine Podcast. We're talking about one of our favorite topics in the world, relationships. And we have just an incredible guest today that we're so excited to talk with. Cathy, Courtney, welcome to the Medicine.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with both of you. And I just loved watching you introduce your lovely husband and see how you sort of lit up at that introduction. That was sweet.
Yeah, he never knows, what he's going to get with my intro. Sometimes it's, my future baby daddy.
That's awesome.
Well, we're just so excited to have you here. And, I just want to jump right into it. What is it about relationships, conscious relationship work that keeps you leaning into this space? What is it about relationships that makes you dedicate so much of your life towards this work?
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is we're all on a path to wholeness. I believe we come in whole and then life happens, limitations, conditioning, and all the things, trauma, you name it. And then we move back towards wholeness. And I think that's the journey of our life. And for me, being in relationship and working in relationship is this beautiful mirror to look at the places inside of ourselves that we're not whole, that we're not healed, that we're wounded, that we're places that are in the shadow. And it's through the lens and the workings of intimacy and all the blocks to intimacy that become the gateway, the gold. And I get so lit up by that transformation that I see happen both in myself and in others around me and the people I work with. It is the most enlivening, juicifying, exciting thing. And honestly, I can remember as a little girl just so badly wanting people to love each other. I grew up in South Africa and there was just a lot of suffering around me. And so I think it was like a real sort of girlhood dream to help people come toward each other again. So it's the conscious relationship, but it's also conscious relating in any relationship to other or to life or to yourself or to life itself. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. We overcomplicate things so much. Every day we are overcomplicating things. And, I open social media or you see a news headline about the global crises going on all around us seemingly every day. And, I get into a place sometimes where I get really, really sad at the fact that we as humans haven't figured out just how to recognize another human as just an extension of yourself in some way, and that fundamentally we are all exactly the same, and we fundamentally all want the exact same things, health, happiness, a long life with people you love. Probably the majority of people out there, that's really when it comes down to it, that's probably what most of us are searching for, wanting, and it just makes me sad that we haven't figured out how to just give each other the most basic, decent respect. And it all comes back to individual relationships and how we are individually showing up in our life to our loved ones in our family and community, and then extending out into the world. And, I'm curious to hear from you, with obviously this deep-seated, very early on passion or longing to see people love each other and get along and all of this. Like, what are you seeing, when you look out into the world right now? Like, how do you view it?
I see it that way as well. It's really at home, in our relationships and how we're relating to people, that actually has the impact on the world. But I would say even before that, when we don't recognize that what we're seeing reflected is really a reflection of ourselves, we're going to be relating to the world and to people around us from like sort of as a mirror of ourselves. So that all sounds wonderful. And yes, that's the path. But the first thing we need to do is really look at ourselves and see, how are these things that we like to other?
Mm-hmm.
Like we like to make it wrong, or that's not me. We get into judgment, we get into polarization, we get into all those things because we're not actually looking at ourselves. We're not looking at how that's reflected in ourselves. I think that is really at the core of this. And it's not that you have to do all of that first and then be in relationship. I think a lot of people have that misunderstanding that I have to be whole and healed. Yeah, to an extent. But I think it's more the understanding than the actual being healed. It's like, it's an understanding and a knowing that I and how I'm relating to this is at the key or the core of everything. And as long as I know that this is the path and I'm aware and I'm holding that in right relation, then I'm in a good place. And I will be on a path of healing that's going to continue and continue and continue.
Yeah. Beautifully put. In our relationship, we got together really young and we got married super young, and we had this codependency that was, seemingly really functional for a long period of time. And it was like really beautiful in a lot of ways. But as we both changed, those codependent tendencies became really, really clear, and they seemed and felt pretty unhealthy, so much so that we ended up, splitting up. But there was this lack of an individuation process that had not taken place in our own lives because we'd gotten together so young. We literally went from being codependent with our parents' relationship dynamic into being codependent in our dating life and marriage, etc., and just never had that allotted space to figure ourselves out. And because of the fact that we got together so young, that figuring out phase, that individuation phase, is usually going to include maybe stubbing your own toe, fucking up to a certain degree, because that's like actually the most profound way to learn. The challenging part when you get in a relationship, and in our case, especially so young, is that those fuck ups don't just teach you a lesson. They might actually hurt or damage the other person in the process because you are in this domain of the relationship. And so we almost had this, like, we broke up and got to figure our shit out with the scope of the liability being quite enclosed just to our life and our individual lives, that if we fucked up or we chose a bad decision that we had to learn from, it was really our lesson to learn, our own self-inflicted pain, and we were kind of able to crawl back through those issues without impacting people in our life that we love, like a wife or a husband or even kids to a certain degree. Can you talk a little bit about what it looks like to individuate or to find your own, ability to love oneself while being in the dynamic of a relationship, such that it's not like hurting the other person in the process? Like, I'd imagine there's a way to do this with a little more delicacy than we did when we were trying to figure our shit out.
Way to go, right in there, Chase. This is the ultimate question. How do we do relationship in a in the healthiest way that has the least negative impact on the whole, on all the people around us. Yeah, I love that. First, I'd love to say that how beautiful that the two of you, it only took you 3 years to figure out you were not going in the right trajectory, and that you course corrected and did your work and came back. And you mentioned codependency. Well, I think so many of us are recovering from codependency. And as you two may have figured out, it's not like a one and done, like I'm healed and now I'm free of it. It's a lifelong. I'm very humble to that pattern myself. And it will continue to show its head in different ways. There's a process of, I think there's layers and layers of letting go. That's a long process. So I just want to name that first. I think that the process of individuation, and some of what you're going to hear, I teach this communication technology called Circling, which we can get into a little bit later, but I love it as a map for individuation and health, as well as I use work. Some of your listeners may have heard of Terry Real. He has a modality called Relational Life Therapy. So his map has been a really useful, helpful map to guide couples through skillful relating. So in terms of individuation, I think it's always really important for each of the partners to continue to do their own personal work, to be committed to their own work. One of the biggest things I think, and you mentioned codependency again, in codependency, there's obviously a range of that, but one of the main things is that I don't have enough awareness of what's actually happening for me in the moment, how to communicate my needs or wants. But really, there's usually a fear underneath it that's driving it, because I'm doing these things, I'm laying down myself and my needs so that I can secure something from you. My pattern was, I will be the supporter and provider, and I will do everything to nurture you, but I'm not going to get my own needs met, but I'm going to do that because I know how to hold on to somebody that way, because you need me. I create a need. So you have to go and look under, like, to the root of where is that coming from? Where's the original fear? So back again to individuation, it's gaining the capacity to even know in this moment, wow, I'm feeling whatever the emotion is, maybe it's sensation, the stories I'm making up. So just even how to know my own interiority, right? So then it becomes like, okay, if I'm now relating to you, not to get a need met, but by actually revealing myself in an authentic, in the moment way. And then you're doing the same, and I'm allowing you to be who you are in your individuated self. Now we can get to, like, clearly create an us, because we're in a system, right? So, and all of us rub up against our wounds. So also knowing when I'm triggered, and knowing how to take ownership and responsibility for what's actually happening in me, and learning how to communicate in a way that's not going to put you on the defensive, where I can still seek to understand your perspective, where I can practice deep listening, where I can take what you say and actually get curious to know more. And then I'm allowing space for both of us to have our experience. And in that weaving, we can weave a shared reality. We can learn to negotiate. We can learn to create agreements that are inclusive of both of us. I want to pause there and ask if that's answering your question adequately, or, like, what does that bring up in the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about, as you've spoken to communication and communicating your experience and letting your partner communicate their experience, and not making anyone wrong for maybe different different ways of approaching an issue or a charged topic. And that is, I think, a ninja life skill, is being able to hear your partner, like actually listening to them and what their experience is, and not jumping to, well, they're wrong because they're not seeing it the way that I see it, but holding their experience at, just as valuable as your lived reality, your experience. And it's a practice. It's not a flip of a switch. When someone hears that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, totally. When you're listening to this you're listening to this beautiful woman's amazing voice explaining all of these wonderful things, and it's like, yeah, totally, that's the way to do it. And then you get into a charged conversation or an argument with your partner, and that stuff goes out the window because we're so ingrained sometimes in our defense mechanisms, in our reactionary responses, rather than like taking a breath and remembering the tools that we learn on podcasts like this. And I think, it took us obviously a divorce and 3 years of figuring our own stuff out and learning from other people to come back to that place where it's like, okay, clearly we didn't have it figured out. We need to start doing things differently together if we want to have a different type of relationship. And so what's coming up for me is the importance and the emphasis on communication, and that everything comes back to communication. Like, throw away all the other relationship tools of the masculine and feminine and sexual polarity and all of these things that we talk about. If you can't communicate effectively and respectfully with your partner, things are not going to go well. And things did not go well for us. And last thing I'll say is that I would say the majority of people that come to us with questions, women that I talk to, it's like 90% of people, it comes back to communication. So I'll let Chase jump in here, but I do want to, jump back into communication because it is such an important facet of healthy relationship.
Yeah, I mean, what comes up, and beautifully put, what comes up for me and what really resonated is this, especially after this honeymoon phase or the phase of the relationship seemingly feeling effortless, that first initial charged conversation, or, let's say it's the first half dozen charged conversations or feelings of like something's not particularly as smooth as it once was, is that we may not even know why we're feeling that way. And we don't have the tools to even be able to self-assess as to what the trigger might be, where this is coming from, especially in young relationships. And so it's almost like the charged conversation or the argument or the communication will do nothing but make it worse, because there's more of a chance that you'll use projection of something, that you will be defaulting to some level of blame with your significant other for that problem because you're subconsciously embedded in this sort of like codependent dynamic, that I can't help but think the critical component to relationship success is this education and embodiment of practical communication modalities that probably start with the ability to self-assess where these feelings are coming from, even to begin with, so that you can set the table for having a conversation that's actually rooted in authentic feelings and thoughts that you might be having, that are removed of what we might, in our very immature way or naive way of communicating at that point in time, just end up being projections, the communication of triggers, or some level of finger pointing or scorekeeping. So that's definitely what's coming up for me, which is just kind of piggybacking on what you have to say, which is like this component of self-assessment and communication is just so incredibly important, and something that I think still to this day, before we have a conversation that's important or has some weight to it, the question is like, am I even sure about what I'm feeling right now? Like, am I even sure that this level of discomfort has anything to do with the relationship? Maybe it's just my own shit on something else. I want to be really careful about how I
Yeah.
use this feeling in our relationship dynamic, because it might actually be with my boss or my dad or somebody else, you know?
Yeah. Or you might not be in a regulated state to
Yeah.
have a healthy conversation. If you're riled up about something, it's like we need to be able to like regulate ourselves so that we can have healthy dialogue. But yeah, I'll kick it to you.
Exactly. So there's a lot in there. The first thing you talked about, nervous system. So I want folks to know that when you feel triggered and upset, it's not your adult brain is no longer on board. It's the implicit memory in your body. You know, we're always checking for safety, like 4 times a second. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? And something happens out here with your partner. And if you're triggered, it's basically you're back in the past. There's something in the implicit memory stored in your body. So when you're feeling that way, know that you no longer have your frontal cortex online with you. And no good conversation unless you want to play out the drama over and over again and you're into that. Cool. But if you want to actually have a healthy relationship and healthy communication, the first step is really knowing that that's happening. Oh my gosh, I'm flooded, I'm triggered. Now I'm in my adaptive child. And so, and this framework comes from Terry Real's work, which comes from somebody else named P.M. Melody, by the way, who wrote a fantastic book about codependency and love addiction. But anyway, the adaptive child, the adaptive child is on board when you're seeing things as black and white, right and wrong. You're rigid in your body. You want to be right. You know, we all kind of know that place that we go to. Or if I suddenly put up a wall, that's all signs that you're now in your adaptive child. And couples get stuck in that all the time.
So does one child have something to do with a version of your childhood or a child archetype that plays out?
Thank you for the question. Yes, it's basically what you've learned from ages, I think, like 7 to 20. It's how either you're responding as you saw a parent model or an adaptation to your situation, which obviously at the time was a very wise and smart adaptation for survival.
Mm-hmm.
But now in intimacy, it's a maladaptation. It doesn't work for intimacy. So that's the first step. And so whatever you can do to pull out the tools to regulate your nervous system and to tend to your inner child. So when that happens, the best thing to do is to call a timeout. You know, hey, I'm feeling really flooded. I want to continue this conversation, but I need 20 minutes. Mm. And that's a really good thing to have agreed upon before those moments. So it doesn't create more disturbance. So, and maybe you two do this, is like just to have an agreement that when this comes, we call a timeout, but the timeout's not endless, because if you're an anxious attached person, as I am in the background, that's hell. Mm-hmm. So it's an agreed upon time frame. And during that time, you don't just go and shut down. You go and actively do your nasal breathing to stimulate the vagus nerve and breathe into your belly and calm. I know you talk to your listeners about this stuff, but like really calm your nervous system and also tend to the inner child. You know, there's some wound there that's happening. Can you do your work to really come back to center? Then when you come back at the agreed time, you really own your experience. Hey, when you said X, this is the story I made up about it. This is how I interpreted it. And this is how it feels in my body. And you know, like, I think that there is like, I felt threatened. I feel sad, and I feel myself wanting to pull away. And you might not know all of it. So maybe then you even say to your partner, please, I just want to request some patience while I work this through. There's something here, but I think this is what it is. And, you know, and then there's 2 ways you can go. I like to offer 2 options. One is, what was happening for you? What is your truth? I know I had this story, but what is really true for you here? And so now you've set your partner up, you've given your partner space. You're not putting them on the defensive. You're not attacking them. You're not making them wrong. You're fully owning your experience. The other path you can do is if there's been some space and time, it's a good place to insert a request. And that might look like, it would mean so much to me if you could blah, 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 or if you could really put your attention on this, that would be so meaningful for me. Is that possible for you? And then the other partner gets to say yes or no. And the rule of thumb here is you say yes. You just say yes because it's good for the ecosystem of the relationship, unless it's at too much of a cost to you. And you know what that is. Mm-hmm. So I think that's like a really important piece, is to recognize when you're no longer actually present moment from your adult brain dealing with another adult. You've now both, gone into your adaptive child, and nothing good will come from that. Yeah. Just pain and suffering and disconnection.
Yeah.
These are really, really powerful tools. Thank you. Resonating for me even in the request for a timeout, like, is such a just incredible tool that people should use early and often. And even us, I'm definitely going to be using that as a modality for future charged conversations, hoping they're few and far between.
Not perfect
absolutely
yet.
Still have them, but it's so authentic, which is what you want out of a charged conversation, because this is actually, believe it or not, the discomfort of it. Putting that aside, these are the moments that you have to really grow in your relationship. And so you should partially get excited about them, because if you succeed through them, these are going to be like memorable moments that stumbling blocks turn into stepping stones for sure. And there's something so disarming about even less the words you say, but the temperament with which you communicated them. And especially for a masculine, being able to see the feminine in a spot of just vulnerability and requesting, whether that be just to listen, even if I don't necessarily know how to articulate the things that I'm feeling in this moment. If I express them authentically, there will be an energetic recognition from your counterpart who loves you. If there's not, if it's triggering further, if it's causing further distance, further coldness, that's good feedback too. That's good feedback that you've just exposed your vulnerable heart in all authenticity to the person that you've identified as the one you would like to share some level of loving connection with, and it's not received or held sacred. That's feedback that this may not be the relationship for you. And so I think we communicate that often to our audience, where it's like, man, if you are kind of like stepping into this space of vulnerability and putting all the tools in and having nothing but, the most utmost pure intentions in these types of conversations, and you're still feeling reject, coldness, man, maybe that's actually good feedback too.
Yeah. It's a perfect segue to, I wrote down a question here for Cathy, like, okay, you're talking about, getting out of your adaptive child and stepping into your wise adult and being able to communicate from that place. Hopefully both people together is the ideal situation. But unfortunately, we're all well aware here that sometimes one person is willing to step out of that adaptive child and move into wise adult mode, but they find that their partner is not willing to step out of the adaptive child, or maybe they don't even realize that they're in adaptive child. That's a really hard position to be in for the one partner who's wanting to move past that or wanting to be in wise adult. How does the wise adult communicate to their partner that, like, hey, you're in adaptive child mode, and then go from there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. So if that were happening to me, and actually it did recently, in a mild way, like it was not an attack, a defense attack. It was just a little defensiveness. Then I would say, I'm noticing, or it seems as if, or I'm imagining, because I'm not saying you are. That's the worst. When somebody tells me what my experience is, I just want to, like, it doesn't feel good, right?
Yeah, God,
So
we're so accustomed to wanting to do that. Like, I'll feel it on the tip of my tongue sometimes. They're like, God. Like,
I know, like, swallow. But how different is it to say, I'm imagining, because now I'm owning my projection. I see your face getting red, and I'm imagining this is landing or touching on a place that has you feeling defensive. Does that feel accurate to you?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just that blah, 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 and how about we take a little more time? Because I think we'll get a lot more out of this if we can both be in a grounded place. And I honor that you're not quite there yet. So I don't know. I think that's a good way to do it, as opposed to like, oh my God, I can't believe I've done this so well. And now you're defensive. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
If that's happening all the time and you never get to a grounded eye-to-eye, heart-to-heart place, well, that's a different conversation. But if I'm now learning a tool that I'm bringing to my partner and we've been in a different paradigm prior to this, it takes time. It takes one person being more regulated in their adult self. It should ultimately shift the whole system, but it takes some time. So I would really suggest patience and commitment. And then, of course, at some point, if nothing shifts, then that's an inventory you have to take. Is this really the right connection for me?
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, what might be helpful in some situations is if, someone is trying to have a healthy dialogue and move past and step into wise adult, and they just they're not being met in that place over and over and over and over again. I am not saying that the solution is like divorce or break up or whatever, but I think the next best step that I can think of is really conveying to your partner how much it hurts you, how sad it makes you, that we can't get to a place where both of us are, ready to move past or ready to evolve together. And like physically showing your partner how brokenhearted you are at this. Because I think a lot of couples get into grooves and patterns where one of the partners might just have this story in their head, like, this is just how we are, where the other person is like longing for more, longing for a different type of connection. And if they're not being met over and over and over, and the other person is just like, this is just how we are. What do you mean? Like, this isn't good enough for you? This is how we've always been. This is just how it is with us. And I think, getting to that step where you can really authentically show your partner how brokenhearted you are, that this is not a priority to them, and that it is a priority to you. I think that those instances are necessary sometimes, not to be just dramatic just for drama's sake, but if breaking up or moving apart or divorce or whatever is on the table, it's like you got to get to that place where you can really expose everything that's happening inside of you before you spring it on your partner that like, hey, we're not good, we're not a good match. I think that there's a few steps in between.
Absolutely. And I think it could be something like, ouch, like every time this happens, I'm noticing it's chipping away at my generosity, at my ability to soften with you, my desire for you. And I'm really working hard here to have us have a different outcome, but I want you to know that this is hurting me so much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like really let your partners feel that. Ultimately, you need to have some leverage, but there is a whole range of that in between. Like it might mean that I'm a little more, I want you to know, like I'm feeling closed off. And like, then I'm not available for as much sex, right? Like there's a way I'm not leaning in. Mm-hmm. I want to lean in and I can't lean in. Okay, I feel walls coming up. Ouch. You know?
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work, then it's like, well, I can't do this. I'm reaching the end of my tether. Yeah, what do you think about that, Chase? Like, how would that occur if, as a man, if Mimi was coming to you with that? How does that land in your body?
Yeah, I think definitely what comes up for me is, and it's probably just speaking from my perspective, but I typically just melt when I see that she is in some level of turmoil and feeling sad emotions. I also know that is a spot where in the past, out of my own fear, because a deep fear for me is that the feminine in my life is not savable. And so I will drop anything and everything and basically say, what do you need? What do you want? I'll do anything. And that's not always the answer either. In fact, it's interpreting the emotion and the feeling and being able to step into it with still a level of leadership and ownership and responsibility, and for taking the relationship into a phase where we're not having to have these types of conversations, where you're not having to have these types of feelings. And so speaking of taking inventory, there may be a level of taking inventory as far as like, hey, what is it exactly that I'm contributing to make you feel this way? But at the same time, in our relationship, even, it's been repulsive when I've done I'll do anything you say. What do you want I'll make you happy. I'll try to make you happy with following the list or the checklist. And so for me, there is like speaking to men or speaking to that masculine attribute. Oftentimes it's a validation to step into that space and to validate the feelings that they're feeling as true and authentic. But the literal words may actually not be to follow the literal words or instructions from that place may not actually be what the request is at its root. And so oftentimes it takes some level of interpretation. Hey, maybe it's not as much that I need to follow a to-do list as much as I need to step into presence and leadership in the relationship dynamic. I need to be safer. I need to be more stable. And even if the things that she's putting down on this list are what she thinks she wants right now, as long as I'm nailing safety, stability, leadership, consistency, maybe it's actually those pillars of the relationship dynamic that she's asking for.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. So what you're really saying is her list might actually be her nervous system dysregulated. And what's actually underneath that is her desire to meet you or to be met by your leadership, your stillness, your steadiness, and your presence. And that's, and to hold space, to provide the container for her emotions. And for you to stay in your alignment as opposed to a collapse or a, mommy, I don't want to upset you. Like, that's icky, right?
Right.
Like, I'll do anything for you. Like, that's partially sweet and sick at the same time. That's the codependent pattern that you just named.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. That's a big lesson for me. And I think in a lot of cases, with other men that I witness, both in our community as well as friends and various connections, and it's this masculine need to make sure that mom's okay, and
exactly
make sure that the feminine is okay, and that trickles into a lot of different lanes for sure. We're 40 minutes in, and everybody should be well aware that you're just a master in this space. So I'd love to give a few minutes and a little bit of time just to allow you to explain, what you do. You're clearly in this work on a deep level. What is it that you do in the relationship domain? And then I'd love to get into even further some big questions around like conscious relationships. And so, but a few minutes here, like, what is it that you're doing on a daily basis in this space?
Thank you. I'm working with individuals, and I'm working with couples, and I'm working with groups. And My work with individuals is really the relationship to self, how to find compassion ultimately for those exiled parts of self, those parts that have been cut off because at some point they were not perceived as lovable. And so coming back into a sense of relationship with self that feels loving enough, loving enough so that I can experience some sovereignty and also be able to relate to others from a more grounded, steady place, to have more understanding of myself, to help bring out the essence of me, my signature. What is my signature essence? With couples, I work a lot with a little bit of what we talked about. First, seeing what is the dance that couples are doing. It's like these two beautiful people come together and then you find yourself actually in a dynamic or a dance that has nothing really to do with the essence of you. And it's more the adaptations and what you learned from your parents and conditioning. So first seeing what the dance is, and then doing some of the inner child work in front of each other so that there's greater understanding. And then providing all the tools, relational skill, tool building. With groups, I have done a lot of work in the last year, and this is how I know Kyle is through Fit for Service. I'm sure you're familiar. And I go and lead groups in a practice called authentic relating, or the Circling Method, which is just basically a communication technology that teaches all of these things about how to listen, how to express yourself authentically in real time, how to get curious, how to reveal myself, how to reveal the impact that I've had in being with you. And it's amazing that these groups, none of them know each other at first, but you guide them through these very particular exercises, and very quickly people drop in and they have these experiences of being seen and heard. And it's amazing how something so simple is so potent. And I was just there last week and I had countless participants. We've been in a container for a year together, come up to me and say, "Oh, thank you so much. I took this skill that you taught us and I went and had a conversation with my adult daughter and our entire relationship has changed."
Wow.
Or I'm taking this back to my team and people are wondering what I'm doing because things have really, like my software team, and I'm actually listening to my team and like everybody's noticing it. Or, I mean, the countless stories of these, what feel like really simple ways of being. So those are the things I'm doing. And then I also go into organizations and work with the relational dynamics of a group. Because one of my favorite things is like noticing where there's the knot of the thing that nobody's addressing, but everybody's organizing around. And it's amazing. Like, just if you create the right space and the right ingredients, things just start coming out and that knot starts to release. And next thing you know, there could still be differences in the space, but there's connection in the differences. And it is remarkable how much that changes things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I love working with conscious organizations because the goal and mission is to have positive impact on the world. But if your relationships in the team are not in a clear, healthy space, it's not sustainable out in the world. So these are the places that I feel really passionate about working in.
God, that's so good. I mean, coming from the, my background is in business, and it was in a financial consulting role, and then it was through, startup environments and early company experiences, and the breakdowns are always human breakdowns. It's always emotional intelligence, relational intelligence. It's always egos and the arrangement of archetypes and personality patterns that end up causing some of the most beautiful moments as well as the most challenging. And the breakdowns are very few times is it always just a strategic business decision that's the problem. It's actually oftentimes the human beings that are, pulling the strings, if you will. So I love that you're doing that work. because everything's about relationships, and it's not just in the romantic domain. Would love to know from you, because we're in this world of conscious relationship work. What does a conscious relationship mean to you?
Oh my goodness. It's been changing. At this moment, to me, it means that there's a purpose for this relationship. I believe personally that where we are in this time, in this life, on this planet, and one of the core important parts of transformation on a planetary level is conscious relationships. Because one thing, very palpably put, and I'm sure you two have experienced this, when you get into conscious alignment and you've got a vision together, all the people around you are positively impacted. You create kind of like if you think of a mycelium network, I love to think of that you create like a hub of light. And in all your doings and all your interactions, the way that the two of you are together and your energetics is actually really, really powerful, and it's expanding out. All of a sudden, other people want what you have. They feel inspired. You're in a conscious relationship also opening yourself. You're becoming more and more whole, and what you're bringing to the world is together is far more impactful than as an individual. But if we're caught in the sufferings and the disconnect and the this and the that, it doesn't free us up to be our best selves that we're here to be. And we need that so much right now. We need so much healing. So for me, conscious relationship is doing all the practices so that we can be full, like empty vessels, move the energies here, create the manifestations through our energy, whether that's through sex magic or visualization or visioning together. And then how do we use this as a positive, kind of like a lighthouse or a hub to help expand love and light out into the world?
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Beautiful.
I totally feel that. When you talk about having a dream or a mission together, it's something that Chase and I talk about, just in our own time together, but then also on the podcast, having a high dream. That language is borrowed from our friend Jason Picard. And he really inspired us to develop, to talk about, to establish a high dream for ourselves and individually, and then also for the relationship. And so we talk about this all the time, and it's not just one thing. It's changing and evolving, and it has different facets, but we openly talk about what do we see for our future, for our life, for our business together, for our love together, for our future family. There's a certain nutrient in having a high dream that it's almost like that high dream also roots your relationship deeper and deeper into healthy soil, so that you have sort of a North Star to help guide you in your daily relating with your, because you have that high dream that has almost like its own consciousness to it. And that's what I've noticed with our relationship as we've grown and evolved together. Having that high dream is really powerful as, really building up the soil, the foundation of our relationship moving forward. It's such just a lovely reminder and fuel to showing up your best every day for the relationship and for your dream together.
Yeah. Part of that process is you articulate the low dream, like, hey, what does it look like when we're like doing the opposite of what we just spelled out?
Yeah.
And fortunately for us, we have context to know what it even feels like to be in the low dream. And so you get to this space where you're actually like man, this weekend was high dream. Like that was a high dream weekend. This was the best version of this relationship with you and I, man. This was just like dunking from the free throw line of relationships. But we also have the low dream where we can both in love say like that was like low dream, dream moment for us, or I feel as if I'm having some of those thoughts that I was having when we were in the low dream of our relationship. And and so like, it really is beautiful context. You can kind of like eliminate a lot of the excess words that are needed when you can just like pinpoint and clearly articulate what it looks like to be at these sort of two polarities.
I love that. There's so much in what you both shared. First of all, when you speak, Mimi, or when you were just speaking, I felt such beautiful resonance. Like I feel there's a similarity in there's a flow that I'm like, the feminine, I just love the feminine. But what came up for me in your speaking, I just had the honor of receiving guidance at the summit I was at from John Churchill. I don't know if you're familiar, but he led us through, he's a long student of Buddhism and he teaches with his wife, and he led us through this embodiment meditation. And it was the most powerful meditation I've ever been in. And he brought us very deep into the roots of the earth and felt the stability of the earth. And he also brought us up into our pineal gland. And the one place that really bridges those is the heart. So it's not just what is spirit guiding, how am I rooted? It's how is the heart leading?
Mm-hmm.
And that piece is so important. The heart, coming back to the heart, how is that leading and guiding us? And then Chase, that description and Mimi of the high dream and the low dream, I love that because it, like you said, it takes the words out. You don't have to get into the nitty gritty. And man, do I know that feeling. Like I just came off a seriously high dream where we were in this space and we got so many people coming up to us. Oh my gosh, you too. Yay, I'm so inspired. And it feels good. Can't lie. It feels good to be seen in your conscious relationship. But just like weeks before, I was caught in a loop of critical thinking. I learned how to criticize men through my mom. Men are always a disappointment. That's the belief that was handed down to me. And I was churning and wrestling with that, wrestling. And I think like now that I've looked back and really drilled it down and like looked at the root of it, there was a fear. Can I really actually receive all this love? And I think we do that a lot. Like we create these blocks to receiving, and they look different ways. But for me, and maybe part of my low dream and our low dream is when I'm letting the fear start to actually be the thing that's presenting or guiding me or flooding me. And I think it's about him, but it's about my own fear. And then all of a sudden my thinking gets crooked. And so it's really good to know what your own low dream looks like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then being able to communicate that to your partner so they're not just left in the dark on why you're in a mood or why you're stressed out or what is happening. I think that is critically important. And to frame it in a way when you are in a low dream moment that is not, criticizing of your partner or accusing them in any way, but it's like, no, this is my experience right now. And I would love support in this way, XYZ, or like, I'm in a low dream moment. Can I have a hug? Dude, guys out there listening, sometimes the answer is not an hour-long conversation of figuring it all out and sorting through your stuff and nitpicking all the childhood trauma and this and that. Like, if you're in a charged conversation and it feels right in the moment, she might just need a 20-second hug from you. He actually feels your body containing her. And sometimes, that and a good long 10-second eye gaze or longer if you want, damn, that can do it. Honestly, it can, almost like the intimacy of sex can as well, where if there's charge and, we see that in movies all the time where, they have a fight and then it's blow up and then it's makeup sex and it's, super hot and heavy and charged and everything. And the sex sort of dissolves the separation that you're feeling between, those two people. But I feel like the same effect, can be even simpler sometimes with a hug, a long hug and a long eye gaze. You are immediately dropped into the reminder of like, oh yeah, my partner is a human like I am. And they're going to do things that are going to piss me off. But damn it, I love this person so much. And I see their eyes linked with mine. I feel their body on mine. And that ultimately is the, I think, common denominator that can bring you back together in a moment of charge. Like, it really can be that simple.
Yeah, it's alchemy, right? It's like that's the space where alchemy takes place, and structure and words and a lot of these strategies are really, really helpful, and they are tools that you should keep in your tool belt. But occasionally, or maybe more often than not, using the modality, if you want to call it that, of just physical touch and the spiritual connection of looking at somebody in the eyeballs. Are you kidding me? That is like so powerful. And if you want ecstasy or Molly available to you at any time, just stare at somebody. 60 seconds and your serotonin and your oxytocin and this connection hormone, these connection hormones and love hormones are just fireworks in your body, and it's amazing. So those tools are available too. You don't have to overcomplicate this. And sometimes if you lean into those more often than not, that's kind of the secret sauce. I have something to piggyback on that, and it ties back into something you were talking about with these companies that you work with, where you change the dynamic and you help them stay open. I don't know if those were the exact words that you used, but essentially it's staying open rather than closing off. And that's so powerful because it forces you to open. Looking at someone in the eyes, you're not looking down, you're not like looking up, trying to avoid their gaze, and your body is literally open. You are energetically and physically communicating to yourself, your partner, and the universe that like, I am open here and I'm not closing down. Oh, we can cover ourselves up with clothes and makeup and different styles, and but you can't bullshit the eyes. You can't do it. No. Like being nude energetically with someone when you just make eye contact. It's incredible. Those are the really, really simple, so simple that I think they're overlooked so much of the time. Those little things that you get in the habit of in conscious relating, looking your partner in the eye, opening your body to them. It's so simple, but they are potent.
And for some people, that's too much of a leap, I have to say. Like, I'm an eye gaze junkie. And I love looking in people's eyes. I could do it all day long, seriously. And there's some people I've worked with. So I offer couples this practice. And for some, depending on where they begin, it could be too much. So what I would suggest in that case, I think also sitting back to back and tuning your breathing together is a nice one. And then also doing some simple partner yoga. So you drop into your bodies first, and then maybe doing some eye gazing. So if you're somebody out there listening and you're like, eye gazing, are you kidding me? That's absolutely terrifying to me. We're all practiced at it and we love it. If it's too much, there's a way to get there. But it is definitely, to find yourself on a trajectory toward that is key. And the physical touch, yes, like to just be held, to lie on top of your partner's body and just drop in and let them hold you. The nervous systems get to co-regulate that way. And breathing, dropping to breath, like rhythmically breathing together And before you know it, you might be making love.
I was just
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say, like,
Right.
talk about foreplay. Like, you don't even need to necessarily kiss sometimes. Just the co-regulation of your nervous system and getting on the same frequency, and like it's like you're tuning your channels together. And sometimes that honestly is like the best foreplay, is just breathing together, which
Yeah.
is pretty nuts when you think about it. But I'm curious to hear from you. You know, you work with so many couples, individuals, obviously, and groups. What other major, huge, massive communication problems or mistakes do you see with individuals or couples? And what is your, remedy to some of these massive communication problems?
Well, there's a couple. I think, resentment. That's the lack of communication. Resentment is such a killer. And even when people start to communicate, if there's a lot of backlogged resentment, it makes it really hard. So sometimes it's providing a container of time to just share, what is on your heart, like what's been withheld. And actually, to avoid that, what I do recommend for couples is a practice of appreciation and withholds. And I'll tell you how my partner and I are doing it is you have a time container. It helps to have a particular time every week where this is what we do. We're doing a card share. And you start with one appreciation and you go back and forth, and maybe it's 3 appreciations. And your appreciation is not like, oh, I'm so appreciative how hot you are and how you made love to me. It's a story. Like, I appreciate the way you looked at me when we were in the grocery store and I was stressed and you just held your gaze. And I noticed it really relaxed me and I felt safe again. I love how you do that for me. It's like that. It's not, it's like telling the story of why you appreciate it. And then once that practice is, you've cleared that, then I have a withhold. And you share back and forth 3 withholds. So like this week when, we're on the phone and you talked about X, I actually went away feeling why. I felt, closed off. And then you say thank you. And you go back and forth and back and forth. And then you each get to select one of those that you want to unpack further. And you put a time container around it. So, okay, I want to bring up the one that you talked about around, how I showed up at the dinner party and you felt uncomfortable with. Can we unpack that one? And then your partner picks one, and you take maybe 5 to 10 minutes to unpack a little bit deeper, and then you're clear. And then you have that a week from now to do again. This way, it kind of eliminates the need to always bring things up, the little nitpicky things. And it's a good inventory check. Like, what am I withholding that's actually creating a little distance? Or it's having me look at him a little differently. It's shifted my perception. So that's a really good practice, I think. That's helpful. The other is how to have more of what you want in a relationship. I think to go from, unfortunately, in heterosexual relationships, women are more prone to complaint. And so, and isn't it a classic thing? As a man, I never get it right. I can never do enough. He never gets it right. Like it's this classic dynamic. So to move away from complaint to request is a massive game changer too. How do you do that? Well, if you're not good at making requests, or you don't even know what the request is, if you have a complaint, take time to sit down and write the complaint down privately. Look at the complaint and see what the request is in there. There's a request in every complaint. When I come to my partner with that request, number 1 is to know that it's not a demand. I have to be able to take a no. This is not a demand, so take any energy away that feels like a demand. Your partner's going to feel it. And you start by appreciating what's going right. Babe, I love the way you have been taking a little more time, romanticizing me before we have sex. And what would really make a big difference for me is if we took even more time during foreplay. Would that be possible for you? Or, that's just one example. Maybe it's as simple as doing the dishes. I love how you've been making more of an effort in the house to help me with the kids. And it would mean so much to me if you could do more of the dishes. Oh, I would just love that. Would that be possible for you? I mean, what a difference then. Oh my God, I can't believe it. There's like a sink of dishes again. You never do the dishes. I've asked you 1,000,000 times to do the dishes. I'm so overwhelmed. That can be a very common way of complaining. So I'm going to pause there and see what comes up in the two of you around that.
They're gold. Those are really, really golden nuggets. We have a practice we call the check-in, which is really similar in nature to the request and withhold.
Appreciation.
Yeah, appreciation.
Appreciation, withhold, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really, really practical and things you can get started on immediately.
Yeah, it's like, the oil changes for the relationship. And these types of practices, as we're talking about conscious relationship, this is the time in the gym, getting the reps in. You're already in a healthy place. You already, have a good amount of muscle mass on your body. You look good, you feel good, and you want to stay that way. And these, check-ins, as we call them, or the practice that you just shared, are beautiful and simple examples of how you can grow together using these tools, but also healthy relationships can stay healthy. Because as you navigate new seasons and cycles of your life, we don't have kids, but we're talking about it, and it's in our, near-ish future. And that being parents is going to open up a whole new facet of each of us, whole new pockets of light and dark that are available to us, and new buttons that get to, be pushed for the first time. And when we come into these new seasons and cycles, even though we're already healthy, even though we already have a wonderful relationship, I want it to stay that way, you know?
Well, yeah. Like one of the things that comes up often and then adds to the charge of one of these conversations that can turn charged is, why haven't you been bringing this up? Why haven't we talked about this? And maybe I'll just speak for myself, because that's a lot of times when we've had conversations that are, argumentative in nature, there's an extra layer to it if it's something that hasn't been brought up and it's been a long period of time. So what I love so much about these practices is that it actually eliminates that additional weight to a conversation that might need to happen in the future by simply having a ritualized protocol for engaging in these types of conversations where very naturally these things can come up and be brought to the surface.
Yes. And actually what's coming up for me as you're saying that is another important element is to make sure that in between all of these conversations, you have play. You're having play, you're having a range of experiences, you're dancing together. We have a ping pong table downstairs because we love to play ping pong together. Even in the thick of a tense moment, it's like one of us can call it, let's go play some ping pong.
Oh, wow.
And I beat him almost every time. We're healthy competitive together. It's really fun. And varying, I think there is also a tendency to keep coming back to the work, which is awesome, but keep a balance of play and laughter and communing with others and have a range of experience. And that's what's nice about having a scheduled practice. It's there. We're going to get to that. So that frees me up for, these other things. It's meant to be joyful,
really,
relational joy.
Yeah, really, really
Yeah,
good.
I love that point.
Key pillar of our relationship is play. When we were at our worst, our low dream includes a very little to no playtime
Yeah,
for sure.
play,
Oh,
laughter, dancing in the kitchen, tickling each other, like till our stomachs hurt. Like,
Well, in the same way that an orgasm can cure a lot of pains, dry heave laughing
Yeah.
can also cure a lot of pains when it comes to
seriously.
relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something we talked about a little before we even hit record, and something that I'm sure you get often is, we've articulated the conscious relationship idea, and it's the question of, how do I get myself a conscious relationship? And I think it comes primarily in two buckets. It's those who are single, or maybe they've been through a couple of relationships and they're at that point where there's like, I'm tired of just mainstream dating or marriages, and I'm really looking for this conscious relationship, this evolved relationship. Or I've been in a relationship, I've been married, I've been in a serious, committed relationship dynamic for some time, and I'm wanting to take the step into this evolved domain. How do I enroll my partner? So maybe if you could
sure.
those two parties, those are, I think, kind of the seemingly unanswerable question, but really, really important and relatable for many.
Yes. I think my answer to the first one might be surprising, and it surprises me a lot, but I think this is what I'm coming to. If somebody is single and really wanting to attract this partnership, I think one of the key factors is actually amplifying your essence. What does that really mean? Like, doing the work first to, there's the obvious working on yourself, looking at the old patterns in the last relationship and working on them. But truly, a lot of those you can't really get exercise with until you're in your next relationship. So yes, and right. But like, how much are you actually experiencing eros in life? Like, how much are you allowing yourself to savor the present moment? How much are you expressing yourself freely? Where are your own lack and limitation showing up in your life? Can I engage in activities that really, it's nature. Think about it. Like, a flower doesn't sit and question a flower. A flower is first nourished by the flower, and then it sort of involutes, and then it has this beautiful nectar that comes out, and the right bees and the right hummingbirds and the right insects know to come to the flower at the right time. So that's where I would take it if somebody is listening and has been wondering. Sure, there's good places to go of conscious-minded people that'll give you a higher probability, but work on your own pleasure in your own body and your own experiences. Learn to pleasure yourself in many different ways. It doesn't have to just be sexual. It's how can I take a walk out in the woods and feel the air on my skin and smell the leaves falling and hear the birds and open yourself up to eros.
I love that answer, and it's a variation of one that I've given many women as well. It's like, you will be more magnetic when you are experiencing more pleasure in your life all around. Like, pleasure is magnetic, and if you're experiencing that, it'll be almost like a pheromone that's undeniable and magnetic.
Exactly. It's very simple, and not so simple for some reasons. We have to get past all the conditioning and fear. And anyway, I love that. I love seeing women enjoy that in themselves, and men too, actually.
Yeah.
Men, I think it's more getting magnetic in the groundedness of your being, in the steadiness, your integrity, your clarity, your holding yourself. I think it's the different energetics. In terms of if I'm already in a very long-term relationship, we've had a particular paradigm, and now I'm wanting something different, that can often create a wobble.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a risk that you need to take. And if you don't have shared agreement yet to go on that journey together, one person has to have the courage to start to lead the path. I have a great story of people we just stayed with last week. They've been together 34 years, and they used to be, I don't know if they were evangelical, but like really like staunch Christians. And she started on a path pretty young of maybe she picked up one book, and maybe it was like a Carlos Castaneda, or it was something like that. And he started to get really scared, and it really went against, his Christian beliefs. And it got more and more, as she opened up one book, the next one opened, and the next experience. And you know how that path to, awakening and evolution happens. And he got more and more scared, and they eventually, it created a rupture. And like you guys, they separated. They had 3 children, and they were at the end of 2 years. They were finally getting their divorce papers signed. They were in the lawyer's office. And they had signed them, and the lawyer got up to leave the room and to get copies or something. And she looked at him and said, "Are we doing the right thing?" And he said, "No." So they started to date secretly so that the kids didn't know.
Amazing.
And she basically took him by the hand, and they started to do these openings together. And now today, 34 years later, they are this beautiful conscious couple that started off kind of where you two did, but a long time ago, a long, long time ago. So it can happen. I think it takes one person taking the lead and maybe affirming the other, providing some safety, affirmation, encouragement. Maybe it's just small bites. It's not the full cake. It's like, let's just try this thing. Are you open to this? It feels this way for me, and I love it. And it creates this in me. And I'm really curious about this. Would you be willing to join me? I'd love to have you with me.
Mm-hmm.
Little bite sizes. And sometimes you can do that, and it's just time for separate paths. And you'll know. That's the other thing. Like, you might start to question it, but really, I know personally, Spirit tells you when it's time. And if you don't recognize it, something will come from the outside and create it. Yeah. That's happened to me time and time again. So I really want to encourage folks, if you have that desire, introduce something small at first. Tell them why it's important to you. And encourage. Don't criticize. And then just trust the path. Trust your own path. And it'll be revealed in the right time. It really will. Either they'll grow with you or they won't. But that's your soul's journey. And you will be guided. It'll really be revealed.
Yeah, it's so good. And just spot on. We are so in alignment with how we look at these very difficult conversations and questions. And, one question that I've posed to people in this position, which of course I never tell anyone, like, oh, wow, it sounds really bad, you should definitely leave the relationship, or, oh my gosh, you got to stay. Obviously, I never say that. But the question of, okay, we're seeing this disconnect. You've tried. How will you feel in 6 months if nothing has changed?
Yeah.
How will you feel in a year if nothing has changed? How will you feel in 5 years if nothing has changed? And it really puts the person into, that mode of evaluating the future, and if they can live this way, because you can't expect your partner to change. You have to be okay with the fact that they might say, no, I don't want to. And it really does kind of put it right into your face of like, damn it, this is a non-negotiable for me. I have to have someone that's willing to grow with me in this particular way, whatever it is. And it really does put it in front of your face, because yeah, it's scary. It's scary when your partner doesn't want to come along and is obstinate for whatever reason. And it's scary to think like of life a different way, even if that other way will be more fulfilling for you. It's still letting go a piece of, of your identity and embracing a new one. But that can be a really scary place for people.
I wanted to say too, a really good relational inventory to take is, am I getting enough in this relationship to grieve the loss of what I'm not getting? Because this relationship is going to give you everything. And there's going to be things that you have to let go of. But am I getting enough to grieve the loss of what I'm not getting?
That's
so
really
good. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to put it, because you do have to weigh the, like, yeah, could I go the rest of my life without this? Maybe. Yeah, I think I could. And I'll accept that. Or, because I'm getting so much, I'm getting so many other things and so many other nutrients from my relationship that it can not be there and I can be okay. But sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful way to put it. I'm going to remember that.
I have to credit Terry Real with that one. I've used it before, but he puts it that way, and I think it's just so clear.
Yeah. I love that.
I was going to add and just the piece about bite-sized little nuggets of snacks towards another way is like a really powerful point, because I think that it can feel like drinking from the fire hose oftentimes, even when you get a partner who's like, all right, I'm enrolled, let's do this, but they're starting from like zero and it feels overwhelming. There's so many, you even just look in like conscious relationships or like masculine and feminine polarity and dynamic. There's books and courses and teachers, and all of a sudden your algorithms on social media, you're feeding all of this to you, and you're like, holy shit, this is so much. And the way that I really like to look at this is, it's not unlike a physical health journey, where if you're in a relationship that is one partner's more inclined to changing the family trajectory of health, and let's say they want the whole family to start eating better and moving a little bit more, and it takes usually the mom or the wife in these cases to enroll everybody into this type of activity, it's really important to take on bite-sized pieces, not unlike you would very slowly start engaging a movement practice. You probably wouldn't go straight into the gym if you've never worked out before and put 250 pounds on your back and try to squat, or have some of these more heavy load type exercises. You really would start pretty slowly, and you would build a relationship with exercise and with nutrition that was able to see benefits, but push you just to where it was like just out of reach. And so you're nurturing this relationship of a little bit of hard work, pushes me past my point of comfort, gives me feedback that I'm feeling better. And now I'm in a higher place to begin sort of this next cycle of learning. And I think that same practice with consciousness and relationship or evolving relationship is really important as well, because those critical components to the basics, like let's just call them the basic pillars of health or the basic pillars of a more mature, evolved relationship, are to be mastered. They're definitely not to be skipped. And it's only when you've had so many reps through them that, of course, you can transcend those structures and be able to live a little more intuitively through relationship dynamics and wear these different hats. And all of that, I think, sometimes gets the cart too far ahead of the horse, because the basics definitely need to be nailed and done so in very bite-sized pieces. And so I love that you brought that up, because it can seem overwhelming. It can seem repulsive or a little too like esoteric if you're not actually breaking it down into chapters that in order can be consumed with some level of feedback along the way that this is working. Because I think especially for men, especially for masculinity, if there's something that they stretch towards and it's outside of their comfort zone, but within a reasonable amount of time, they're given the feedback that it's working, they will get very interested in that. there's a compulsive, almost neurotic nature with the feedback of succeeding that they will really, really want to continue down. So I think ensuring that structure exists is a pretty important component.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
really enjoy being with you too.
Yeah. What a gift. We could talk to you for hours, I'm sure of it.
Yeah. I just love, you have such a calming energy about you, and I'm sure you hear that all the time. It's just really, even over Zoom, I can feel it, and it's like just so balanced and peaceful, and it's just been a joy to talk with you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm really a reflection for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sweet to see how the two of you have done the work, and I know it's not perfect. But the commitment is obviously clear, and yeah, it's beautiful to be in this flow of conversation together, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
That's awesome.
Where can people find more of you, work with you, just consume all of the goodness that you're putting out?
Everything is on my website, so it's cathycourtney.com, and I'm sure will you put the link in the show notes? And or on Instagram, but my website is a great place to find me and the things that I do.
Awesome. Yeah, we will definitely have all the links in the show notes for you guys. Cathy, thank you so much for being here. It was just a joy to talk to you and to get to, gift your wisdom to our listeners and to us.
Yes,
we are recipients of this wisdom as well, and we receive it with open arms because, we've found that when we keep this good, everything in our life, it's like the center spoke of the wheel that we both do contribute to, that everything else in our life seems to get better and flourish even more when this is nourished. And getting to speak with you is a beautiful reminder of that. So much.
Thank you, Rainey. Thank you, Chase. It was a pleasure, and hopefully we'll connect again in the future. Much love.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Check out the show notes for all the links if something resonated and you want to work with Cathy. And we would appreciate if you liked this episode. If anything resonated with you, send it to a friend, someone you love, or just share it on your social media. That really helps get this message out and, also contribute to a more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. We'll talk to you next time. Go spread some light. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.